single-seater racer of former years, but coming towards the end of his first full season in a sports car now, and really enjoying his GT running. And we're going to get our first cars coming out onto the circuit, and interestingly, the number 24 Reiter Lamborghini is first out on track. Now, they actually have will have a three-place penalty on the grid, so wherever they qualify over this next 1 hour session, which is spread in 3 qualifying segments, they will then lose 3 places for the start of the qualifying race this afternoon. And that goes back to an incident at the last race in Spain.
Yes, I think a lot of the drivers were unhappy with the number of incidents that occurred at Navarro. In part, it was due to the nature of the racetrack, in part because it's a highly competitive series. I think we had something like 14 or 15 cars covered by under a second in yesterday's second practice session. So it's going to be very tight and very close, and the penalty that this car suffered as a consequence of it being too aspirational in some of the overtaking manoeuvres is that 3-place drop, and that's going to also apply to one of the Maytech Fords, number 5, Richard Westbrook and Thomas Munch. They also, in fact, in the preview to the show going on there, we saw that contact with the back of the Corvette, and it did a huge amount of damage to the front of the Ford GT, and on top of that they've got that 3-place penalty drop.
Well, as you see Peter Cox take the Lamborghini around on his first outlap, you can see the glorious conditions here, and hopefully we're bringing you a bit of sunshine back into Europe if you're watching in Europe, where it's all getting a bit cold and wintry now. Well, it's a beautiful day here in Brazil, just to rub it in, and climbing up the hill, Peter Cox. A lot of rubber still around the track. There have been cars out on circuit this morning already, so I expect there was sweepers out last night, but it does tend to throw up a lot of marbles, this place.
I mean, it's traditional at Interlagos, and particularly on the climb up the hill, there's a huge amount of rubber, and those are quite large chunks of rubber. They just gather up underneath the cars, and eventually they get chucked out at some point. As Peter Cox runs very wide on the exit of the Senna S, turn 2, then through the curve of de Sol, drops downhill into turn 4, which is the Curva del Lago Part 1, and then Curva del Lago Part 2 is the second part that leads to the uphill climb. So Peter Cox, I wonder what he's thinking about. Normally, in qualifying on a track like this with limited amount of tyres, you've got to go out and make the best lap you can on your first flying lap. But since nobody really has run new tyres here, it's all a bit of an adventure. They don't know really how much level of grip they will have over what they had yesterday. One thing is for sure, they should have a lot more grip, but it may change the balance in the car.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw times of 1:33 yesterday. I would imagine we'll see much quicker times than that this morning. It's a little cooler. The sun is out, but with those new tyres on board as well, we should see some much quicker times, I'm sure. Peter Cox looking quite smooth and controlled on this lap at the moment. A few more cars beginning to come out on the circuit. I did wonder whether it would be a long wait, but actually we're seeing a few cars. He might get held up here by Clivio Piccioni, though.
Yes, it looks very much like it. The Aston just preparing to go onto a flying lap. And of course the Lamborghini comes up behind Peter Cox. We'll feel there's an element of frustration, maybe a little bit of gamesmanship between the Aston and the Lamborghini. He's picking up the slipstream, but of course in reality they're both running now at roughly the same kind of speed, and it's a disadvantage to Peter Cox.
1:34.3, that was that lap, John, for Peter Cox. I would imagine we're going to see some laps a fair bit quicker than that.
Well, on a new set of tyres, with everything working in your favour, in my view, you're going to see a time down maybe 2 seconds a lap quicker than we saw yesterday, so somewhere in the 1:31s. But that tyre performance, once it drops away, it'll be back to the 32s and 33s. But we have yet to see anything approaching yesterday. The fastest time.
Oh, a little, sorry, just to interrupt, a little mistake there from Peter Dunbreck. He ran a little wide there in the Nissan. Don't think it cost him too much time, but he was definitely on the blue stuff briefly.
Well, that will have cost him time, but well, he's showing personal best, as he would do, because it's his first flying lap.
Yep, that's right. So as yet, let's just see what the lap time is. Peter Cox had that 1:34.3. Across the line goes Peter Dunbreck, 34.4. So he goes second quickest, but they are not going to get through, John, at this rate. Now that's a bit astonishing. Andrea Bertolini down in 18th place. This is going to be one of the big stories of this first segment, because at the moment the championship leaders are not going to make it through to the second segment of qualifying, and that is a big shock.
Big shock for the championship leaders, as you say, and you could see in Michael Bartle's face as we had that glimpse into the pit lane, great concern, particularly when the other Maserati of the Hager Sport team is currently on that provisional pole by, well, now just over a tenth of a second from the Jimenez in the Corvette.
Just goes to show that local knowledge works well, but it's a very close field. This car is currently only 1.2 seconds slower than the Maserati that is fastest. 1.2 seconds, but that is enough to put them in 18th position. That's how close the field is here you've got to find just fractions to move up the order. But down in 18th, not enough. They've got to find 3 places to get themselves in that top 16.
And this current lap is not a good lap. It's no better. There's no personal bests coming up on the computer, no greens showing in those sectors around the circuit. So for Andrea Bertolini, all he will have left is 2.5 minutes, which is in effect 2 flying laps. And in fact, it'll be less for that. But anyway, he's got 1 lap now going on to, and he may just about get across start-finish line with enough time to start a final lap, but it's going to be very tight.
And Peter Cox is still not in the top 16 either, so it looks like he's going to be out of the second segment of qualifying unless they pull something out of the bag. So let's just quickly run through the teams and drivers who are not through as it stands at the moment with 2 minutes to go. Peter Cox, Andrea Bertolini, who's now come in the pits, I think. Carl Wendlinger's just got a fraction quicker, but not enough. Wendlinger's still 1 place outside the top 16. Christopher Nygaard in the Aston Martin's not there. Then you've got Bouchou into the pits there, the Bertolini car. Also not in Seiji Ara or Alfred Hager. Well, I don't know if they'd be able to have time to get out and get a lap in here, John. I don't think they will.
I don't think they will either, because it takes 1 minute 33 roughly, and the clock is not going to be... Well, they're not going to do it. It's gone. It's history. They will not be able to get back out on track, do an out lap, and then begin a flying lap. So they've misjudged it. They've misjudged the pace of the circuit. They've misjudged the pace of their own car. And, well, there's no point in going out. Just stay there. Forget it.
Yeah, I think that was a practice pit stop effectively, but there's no point in going out because, as you say, it's too late to go back out. So they have... Unusual for Vitaphone Maserati, that really is unusual to perhaps have got the strategy. Their other car has got through, by the way. Enrico Benoldi's 6th fastest. Now the number 1 car is carrying ballast, I know. I suppose climbing that hill, the ballast is going to make a big difference, but even so, it is a huge surprise they've not made it into the top 16.
Well, I mean, to me, the big surprise, not getting the Vitaphone car, the 2 of them into the second round of qualifying, but it is the pace of Daniel Serra in the Hager Sport Maserati and the pace of Sergio Jimenez in the Corvette. The 2 young Brazilian drivers are really doing a stunning job. That's what they were put into the car for, and it's paying massive dividends. Yep. This car here is another one that really, with Ricardo Zonta, that's what Peter Cox and the Zonta car just ahead, the 2 Lamborghinis running more or less nose to tail.
I tell you what, Zonta is in a bit of danger himself. He's in 14th place. Peter Cox here, I don't think, is he going to make it? No, he's 18th at the moment. Let's just see him across the line. I don't think that's going to... he stays 18th. So Cox is not going to get through to the second part of qualifying. Zonta has, I think, scraped it.
Well, I think they're on 1 more lap. They've got this final lap in which they can make the difference. So they've got across the start-finish line with a little over 10 seconds remaining. So they're both capable of, on this lap, making an improvement. But clearly the one that's going to make the biggest improvement to get into the top 16 is Peter Cox in the second of these 2 Lamborghinis.
Wendlinger has just squeezed into the top 16, by the way, with the Swiss racing team Nissan. That has demoted Duncan Huysman in the Corvette. So he's the one who's now lost out as a result of an improvement. As you say, these 2 are still on a lap. The checker flag might be out, but they crossed the line before it came out. So is there an opportunity for them to do something here? Keep an eye on their split times and see if there are any improvements.
Well, Peter Cox had a slight improvement in that second sector. He had a personal best. But whether that will be sufficient to draw them up from 18th up to 16th is questionable.
Yeah, well, let's wait and see. We've still got the rest of the lap to complete. There is Peter Cox giving it his all here to try and just scrape into that top 16 and give his teammate Christopher Haas an opportunity to then have a go in the car in the second segment of qualifying. But if they don't get in the top 16, then their qualifying session will be over. And as we know, for championship leaders, that is already a fact because the Maserati number 1 car is in the pits. Here we go then, John, coming around to complete the lap. Let's just see what this time is going to be. Zonta crosses the line and goes to 5th. Peter Cox goes across the line and it's no change, I don't think, for Peter Cox. He stays in 18th. So Zonta really did gain on that last lap. He's moved up to 5th in the other car, but Cox wasn't able to follow him. Didn't quite get the same speed out of his car, and he is out now for the second part of qualifying.
But another Lamborghini, not these Riker Sports, but the Munich Motorsport of Dominic Schweiger and Nicky Passarelli. We didn't see them very much this morning. They've slipped in to 3rd place, so there's not much wrong with the Lamborghini. third and fifth at the end of this session.
That is a very impressive run from Dominic Schwager in the number 38 Al Inkel car. You're absolutely right there. And he's the first of the regulars, in fact, because ahead of him, two Brazilian specialists. So he's third and fastest of the GT1 regulars in his Al Inkel Motorsport Lamborghini, just to show that the Lamborghini can work well here. Zonta really dragged that time out at the end too, didn't he?
Yes, he had to. And being a Brazilian at Interlagos, he needed to do that. But what's amazing, you've got two first-time drivers, first and second quickest, Daniel Serra and then Sergio Jimenez. But I think the performance of that Schwager and Pastorelli Lamborghini, that probably to me is the performance of this first part of qualifying.
Especially as Christophe Bouchou in the sister car is out. He's down in 22nd, and we know Christophe is no slouch. So whether they had a problem with that car, I don't know. But Christophe Bouchou's not in it, but Dominic Schwager is, so there's a real surprise. So, some dramas in the first segment of qualifying. Fastest, the new name for us, is Daniel Serra. He's with Haley in the pits.
Daniel, what a first qualifying that was for you. Take us through it.
So I'm very happy. It's my first time in this championship, my first time with this car. So I'm very happy. I'm very happy with the team. The team is very professional. So let's see what my teammate can do in the second qualifying.
And how has the Maserati been feeling to you? It's certainly been picking up the times all weekend so far.
Oh, this is the fastest car I have ever driven in my life. I never drive a Formula 3, so for me it's good. I don't know what to say. When they ask me how is the car, it's always good.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
That's lovely. Fastest car he's ever driven in his life, and he's loving it, isn't he, John?
Well, there's nothing like getting into a car with more horsepower than you've ever driven in the past, and just the adaptation to that is a real joy, and very often that's the reason why a driver like Daniel Serra has done such a good job. He hasn't got that track knowledge or hasn't got the car knowledge, and therefore he's not into trying to anticipate or maybe make too many changes too quickly, as we just get a glimpse of that Christophe Bouchou car out in 22nd position.
Yeah, he seems to still be pushing quite hard. Maybe they've had a problem in this session, and he looks as though he's sort of experimenting to see if they've cured the problem, but really unexpected to see him that far down. I know the times are very close. He was about 1.4 seconds off in the end there. So they are out. Bouchou will not be handing the car over to Marc Basseng. Look at him.
Well, I think that's just total frustration on the part of Christophe Bouchou. I mean, he is a driver we know he's got great talent, and he's not been able to display it at the point when he wanted to. And in particular, the sister car to this one, third quickest. That's just going to rub more pain. And I assumed that he'd actually received the checkered flag, but clearly he's got it now.
Let's get down to the pits. Haley's with Andrea Bertolini.
Andrea, that's definitely not the qualifying session you were hopeful. What was the problems out there?
No, we have a lot of ballast with 40 kilo, and here in the uphill is a big drama, but also I did a mistake in the mid-sector because I tried to do the maximum, and when you run in the limit it's really easy to make a mistake, but anyway, you see it's really close because in 1 second we are 20 car. Anyway, we have a good point. The only good point is we have a fresh tire for the race, but so we check the data and we work to improve our performance during the race.
Thank you.
Well, it is interesting, John, because of course they are championship leaders with a good margin, but if they don't score any points this weekend, and they're going to be starting towards the back of the qualifying race, it does open the door up for certainly for the number 5 Martech car of Richard Westbrook and Thomas Much, who are into this second stage. And Michael Bartels there, he does not look like a happy bunny, does he?
No, he doesn't. You could see the concern that was on his face when we got midway through the session. The times weren't coming. The sister car, it is up in sitting on the screen, but the Benoldi car,
yeah, that was quick.
Was quick, and Andrea Bertolini, who I would always assume would be quick, couldn't get the job done.
Let's just run through those times then. We've got a Maserati and a Corvette 1-2, then a Lamborghini and a Ford, but it's local drivers Daniel Serra and Sergio Jimenez who have beaten the regulars. Dominic Schwager, though, doing a good job in his Lamborghini. Maxime Martin and Neil Yarni both showing that Fords are strong. Zonta grabbed that 5th place at the end there. Bernoldi and Negrão in the other Vitaphone Maserati in 7th. First of the Astons all the way down in 8th, though. It does look as though the Astons might be struggling. Top Nissan is Dumbreck in 9th at the moment. So Nissan's okay. They've got through to this second stage. Still some work to do. There's Jamie Campbell-Walter in his car, 13th. Henrici chasing points is in 14th place, and Wendlinger scraped through there in 16th place but not making it. We've got the Madcrock Corvette, the Writer Lamborghini of Peter Cox, dramatically the championship leading Maserati there in 19th place. We've lost one of the Aston Martin. There is the number 25 car. Ricardo Zonta, though, has now handed it over to the very impressive youngster Frank Kekela, who did such a great job with him last time out when we were in Navarra. The 24-year-old German certainly impressed us. Now, can he do the same here? I wonder how many lessons he's had from Zonta, John. I wonder if they've done a few track walks leading into this qualifying session so that he now knows the tricks of the trade here.
He certainly will be with a very good master. Ricardo Zonta knows the circuit extremely well, and passing it on to your teammate and not passing it on to the other car in the team garage
yeah, that's right.
is, I suspect, the order of the day. But anyway, Lamborghini and Ricardo Zonta. So let's wait and see what happens in this run.
Yeah.
13 minutes to go. Nissan behind.
So the aim now is to get into the top 8, because that takes you through into the final part of qualifying, and that's the target, of course. And it's now going to get very, very competitive. You can bet it's going to be hard. And interestingly, another factor to point out here is that the two fastest cars from the first segment of qualifying are very unlikely to be as quick, because they both have wealthy amateur drivers as the second drivers in those cars. Bit of a bounce there from Kekela. But those wealthy amateur Brazilian drivers who are in the Corvette and the Maserati that was so quick in the first segment of qualifying are very unlikely to make it through into the top 8.
Yes, I mean, it's a difficult call for the team manager. Do you put your gentleman driver in for the session where the first 16 go through, or do you put him in for the middle session where the top 8 go through? So I don't know which way around teams have done it, but in the case of the majority, they put their hot rods in for the first session to get them through to the second, and if it means they will only qualify potentially 9th, 10th, up through to 16th place, that'll be their call.
I think one of the biggest question marks about this second segment of qualifying for me is whether Thomas Much is going to be able to get that Martech Ford into the top 8. That would be such a big boost in terms of their championship chase. Much is perhaps not as quick a qualifier as Richard Westbrook, who's got them into the top 16, but if Thomas Much could get them in the top 8 and then Richard gets back in the car for the final segment, then this championship battle really livens up again, because the Ford would be near the front and we know the Maserati is going to be starting near the back.
Indeed, and that's what Maserati, you could see the concern on the face of the team when they came in. Andrea Bertolini obviously very disappointed. Michael Bartels clearly not getting an opportunity to go out and run in this session. So Maserati, with the Vitaphone team, they got Enrique Benolde in that particular car doing well. The sister car going to struggle, and it will be a struggle, and they will not want to have to fight too hard to get their way up from 18th place up into the top, or into point scoring position of any consequence.
First couple of flying laps just being completed, and it is Frank Kekela in the Lamborghini who's gone quickest, but we're riding on board here the number 10 Hexis Aston Martin with Jonathan Hershey at the wheel. So Clivia Piccioni got it into this part. Now it's up to Jonathan here to see whether they can get into the top 8. Just coming around to complete the lap. Target time at the moment is 1:33.5 set by Frank Kekela. Let's just see what this is. It's a 1:33.8, puts them third quickest. Good start to the session. Thomas Much has started the session well. He's gone into second position, but that by Alex Margaritis goes into third, pushes Thomas Much back to fourth. Armindo is currently fifth. Then Paltalarin, one of the Mark VDS Fords, is up there in sixth place. Frank Kekela has been pushed down to seventh place, and out of it at the moment are the Nissans, John. None of the Nissans, I think, are currently in the top 8.
Well, Jamie Campbell-Walter and
Warren Hughes.
Yeah, Warren Hughes. They are in 9th place.
Yeah.
33.7. They're about 1.3 seconds slower. Warren Hughes 1.3 seconds slower than the quickest time by Nicky Pastorelli in the Lamborghini.
Interestingly, Michael Krum has not been out in the other Sumo Power Nissan yet. We've got a spin for the number 11 Corvette, and that's Claudio Darrouge, who's taken over the car from Sergio Jimenez. Jimenez was so quick, remember, in the first segment of qualifying, but Claudio is not a professional racer. He's an amateur racer, and so he's still getting himself used to the car. Unlikely that he's going to make it through. Currently sitting 12th, but we've still got Henri Moser, Darren Turner, and Michael Krum to set a time.
Yes, and just looking at the times, quickest time so far over the 2 sessions still goes to Daniel Serra, that 1 minute 32.1. Best we've seen this morning in the second qualifying segment, 1:32.4.
So that was Mark Enrici, I think, keeping an eye on, we're keeping an eye on the Corvette now of Alex Margaritis. Can he get even faster? He's currently third, looking to go through into the final part of qualifying. It's Lamborghini on top at the moment, Maserati, then Corvette, and it stays that way as he crosses the line. No further improvement there from Alex Margaritis. So a real mix of brands up at the top at the moment. As I say, Lamborghini fastest, then Maserati, then it's the Corvette, followed by the Ford, then another Ford. First, so we only get down to 5th place before we get 2 cars of the same brand in the mix. And then we've got another Ford as well, followed by, in fact, the Fords, all
very
4
strong.
Fords.
No,
yeah, looking strong.
3rd through 7th place, the Fords are looking really strong here.
Yep, back with a Corvette though. This is Claudio Darush, who we saw have that spin a moment ago. Don't think he's going to make it into the top 8. We wouldn't really expect him to, currently down in 13th. I want to see what Michael Krum and Darren Turner, just looking at that spin again, I want to see what Krum and Turner can do. I think they are both out on circuit now, and we'll get an idea of their lap times in just a moment or two. It's still Nicky Pastorelli on top of the times though in the Lamborghini.
Yes, just looking at Krum and Turner, they are on a flying lap. They've completed an out lap. So we go back to this very quick car with Sergio Jimenez behind the wheel, but not at the minute. His teammate at spin we saw just a moment ago down at Juncal, again not doing the tyres any favours whatsoever.
So it's V12 Lamborghini power currently on top, ahead of more V12 power in the shape of the Maserati. Then the V8 Corvette, not this one, but the yellow car of Enrici and Margaritis. Then it's V8 power again with a whole host of the Fords, all grouped very closely together. Thomas Much, Nicolas Armindo, Marcus Paltella and Bas Linders. And then you've got the first of the Reiter Lamborghinis, the only one of the Reiter Lamborghinis currently in the mix, as we look at the Aston Martin here of Jonathan Hershey.
Currently in 7th place. No, it's not, that's the Dan Turner car in 7th place.
Yeah, 11th place this car at the moment, looking back from it. You've got the camera just mounted down in the bumper, and a wonderful view of that climb up the hill towards the start-finish line. But he's got to do something here. Down in 12th, not enough to get through to the top 8, and that still isn't enough. So he stays down in 12th position. To the Senna S, the shadows across the circuit on this bright sunny day. A little bit of cloud just bubbling around, but gorgeous conditions here at the moment. As he comes through the long left-hander at Curva de Sol. It's an anti-clockwise circuit, of course, pushing the drivers in the opposite direction to what they're used to.
Yeah, one of the few circuits that runs counterclockwise. And, of course, that puts big strain on the driver's neck, and not accustomed to having the majority of the corners going left. And that will affect these drivers very much, even though the levels of grip are not overly high. But it is a physical circuit. It's one of the circuits that usually when a driver completes a race, never there's a Grand Prix or a sprint race, they know they've done a race. And again, high humidity here, ambient temperature creeping up as well, going to be somewhere in the high 20s before the afternoon is finished.
We've just seen Michael Krum go second fastest in the Nissan, so that's a brilliant effort from the German driver. But what can Darren Turner do here in the Aston Martin? Can he get in the top 8? He's 9th at the moment. He needs to find a little bit more speed here. Cross the line goes Darren to 7th. He's just in the top 8, but can he hold on to it? It's pushed Frank Kekela in the Reiter Lamborghini down to 8th. Then you've got the Ford of Marcus Paltala, then Bas Linders. We know the Fords have got good pace, so still to play for with just under 2 minutes to go.
So there's the car that has just gone second quickest. Working hard. I mean, this Nissan has got all the horsepower for the straight line performance, but it is hard work around the slower corners. And again,
let's just see as he continues on this lap. Yeah, this is a tight right-hander coming up here, the duckbill corner. And Michael, is he still pushing? I think he's still... No, I don't think he's pushing quite as hard as he was earlier. Although, yeah, there's a bit of oversteer there. He's still trying pretty hard here.
Well, the key is that the harder you push, the slower you're going to go. There's just no other way around it at Interlagos. Bits of the circuit have been resurfaced, others are relatively old, and that difference in grip from one area to the next having a big effect on how the car handles and how much work the driver's having to do to combat that car handling.
So I don't think this is going to be an improvement in time. He is currently second, though, which should be plenty to get through to the final segment of qualifying. Yeah, that lap was about 4/10 slower than his previous lap, but nonetheless, he is well inside the top 8.
Well, I think he's pretty happy, consolidated a lap And with less than a minute remaining, he'll be making his way back into the pits.
The other Nissan, the other superpower car, isn't in there at the moment. It's down in 12th. Warren Hughes currently in the pits. So whether he's going to see him out again, I rather doubt now with only 30 seconds to go. Jonathan Hershey getting over the curb, and he's got a car in front of him as well.
Yeah, the Maserati just getting in the way of the Aston Martin, coming up to that Junção corner. And there you see, looking back, that's just frustration. That's part of the problem that qualifying inevitably casts up to one or more drivers. They'll be feeling that there wasn't enough use of the mirrors, not enough consideration. There we look and see, can the Aston on that last gasp? Well, they can do another lap, and he got past under par in 10th position.
And he's got this one more lap, yes, as you say, but 10th is not enough. Can he do it on this lap? Compromised on the entry to Senna S there.
Yeah, indeed. Well, that lap was a 1:33.1. He did lose maybe 2-3 tenths of a second, which, well, that's marginal. He needs to be 32.8, 32.8 to be able to get into the final run.
Yeah, so he needs to find about 3 tenths on this final lap. That's asking a fair amount. It looks as though Nicky Pastorelli's Lamborghini is going to end up the fastest time of this second segment of qualifying. Remember, once again, when we get into the final segment of qualifying with the top 8, all the times go to 0 and it's all to play for once again. But Jonathan Hershey is doing his utmost here to try and get this Aston into the top 8. We do have one Aston Martin in there at the moment. That's Darren Turner, who has squeaked in there. And if anything, Hershey has got Turner in his targets if he's going to be the one to get into the top 8.
Not showing anything, well, sector personal best in that first sector. So he needs, well, there's back to this one. But looking back to Hershey and the Aston Martin, no indication of personal best on this particular, and what will be for everybody, final lap.
Henri Moser, who's taken over the number 3 car from Carl Wendlinger, who got into the top 16, the young 23-year-old into the car at the moment, perhaps going to struggle to squeeze a bit more pace out of this car and get into that top 8. I think it's unlikely. Also, the other Hexis Aston Martin of Jan Claire's not made it through. Also, as we expected, the two wealthy amateur racers in the Brazilian racers who are with Jimenez and with Serra are not going to make it through into the top 8. So the fastest 2 cars from the first session have not made it through into the second session. And Jonathan Hershey there, as he crossed the line, no improvement, so stays down in 10th. Henri Moser stays down in 13th position, and no changes on that last lap. So, John, we've got a Lamborghini looking to set the pace, fastest in that segment of qualifying, and very impressive indeed. And of course, fastest of the regulars in the first segment. They won't be up against the 2 Brazilians that were quicker than them in the third segment of qualifying, so the Alinkel Lamborghini looks to be in good shape. But the Nissan and Michael Krum putting in a very good effort there. Zandy Negrão putting the Vitaphone Maserati third. Then what is really, really interesting is that all 3 of the drivers who have got a sort of outside chance of putting Bertolini and Bartels under pressure are going to be in this final part of qualifying. That means Mark Henrici, it means Thomas Much most particularly, it also means Frank Kekela, who's in still with an outside chance. They're all going to be into the final segment of qualifying and a good chance of scoring points against the Vitaphone Maserati drivers.
Yes, who went out in the first segment, and with huge disappointment to Michael Bartels and Andrea Bertolini.
So drama indeed. This is proving to be exciting stuff in Brazil, as we can always expect at this Interlagos circuit. It always throws up unpredictable results. Who can forget Jenson Button's drive to the world title here when qualifying all went wrong for him, didn't it?
Well, he certainly wasn't getting mugged that day.
Absolutely not. That was a tremendous drive, and you can overtake here, and I think that's one of the crucial things to remember. No matter what happens here in qualifying, and it is going to be an exciting final 10 minutes, but you can overtake on this circuit.
Yes, and that's going to be greatly aided by just simply how much rubber people put down on the track, because lots of the rubber you can see already being on up the main uphill straight. Tire degradation is the key. Keep repeating it to this event.
Let's get down to the man who set the pace in that session. It was Nicky Pastorelli.
That's certainly fantastic pace, Nicky. Is that what you expected on this weekend?
Yes, we knew yesterday already that we had a good speed. So up until now it's really good. Well, let's see what happens in Q3, if we can continue like this. I hope so. The car is feeling well, so it should be possible.
Thank you, Nicky.
So there's Nicky Pastorelli, and very, very happy with that performance. But, of course, it's now over to his teammate again, Dominic, to see whether they can maintain that. Let's run through second segment qualifying then. It's Lamborghini from the Nissan, from the Maserati, from the Corvette and Ford. What a fantastic mix of the brands. Pastorelli faster than Krum, and then a good effort from Zandy Negrão in the number 2 Vitaphone Maserati. First time in that car, and he's gone third quickest there. Then we've got Margaritis bringing Henrici into the equation. Westbrook now gets the chance, and this is going to be one of the, well, it will be the best qualifying effort of the year for the number 5 car. They've never been in the top 8 this year, so that's really impressive. They've got their teammates there as well. Aston Martin of Turner and Engers in it. So is the Lamborghini of Kekkola and Zonta. Not making it through the 2 Mark VDS Fords, and that's strange in the end because they were looking very, very...
That you were hoping for. I know you've struggled with grip this weekend. What was the problem out there today?
For me, just it's the first run I've had on new tyres. Just a lot of understeer till too many laps into the run before we get the front end grip that we need. And by that stage, the rear tyres are past the best. So it probably hurts not having had a run on new tyres. But I'm sure plenty of other people are in the same position. But the general pace of the car isn't too bad, I think. But it's just trying to nail that lap when the tyres are at the peak. And for me, I couldn't quite get that sweet spot. But it's not a terrible position to start from. I mean, it's mid-pack, but we generally have good consistency in the race. And as the races progress, people seem to come back toward us. So I'm still hopeful of a good points haul this weekend. So we'll see.
Thank you, Aaron.
That car, of course, carrying a bit of ballast compared to the other Sumo Power car because they had a good run last time out in Navarra, so that's no doubt affected them a little bit in comparison to the performance put in by Michael Krum. But Dumbreck will be taking over in the other car. Now, Richard Westbrook has, as I say, a real chance. He'll love this, John. He relishes this kind of situation. He's one of those drivers that responds to pressure and an opportunity to perform. Well, he's got one here.
Well, he's a racer. He's not just a racing driver. He's a racer. And a situation like he's in now puts him in a very strong position. Worst he can be is on the 4th row of the grid. The best could obviously be front row of the grid, pole position. So Richard Westbrook, a lot of work, capable hands, a driver who could put his teammate Thomas Munch in a very, very strong position, bearing in mind that the Maserati of Michael Bartels and Andrea Bertolini are so far back in the grid, they will really struggle to find any good track position in the opening laps.
Definitely. So Ricardo Zonta onto circuit very quickly. He is not wasting any time in this 10-minute final qualifying segment here at Interlagos in Brazil. Really building up to be something spectacular. Zonta was on pole, if you remember, last time out at Navarra. That is Lamborghini's only pole position of the season so far. But I tell you what, they could be on for another pole here. Maybe this car, but maybe the other car of Dominic Schwager, which has been so impressive. Also, no pole positions yet this year for either Nissan or Ford. Well, we've got opportunities here because Peter Dumbreck's got the Nissan in the top 8, and as we've just been speaking about, Richard Westbrook has got the Ford in the top 8 as well. So we could have a new brand for a pole position. Let's wait and see what happens in this final segment of qualifying at Interlagos. Down the hill then, Ricardo Zonta just building up a bit of heat into the tyres now. Interesting what Warren was saying about heating the tyres up, John.
Yes, I am, because the balance between front and rear, with a brand new set of tyres, you've got a different balance, you've got more grip overall, but you may have slightly less at one end or the other until those tyres get to the operating temperature. But in the meantime, you may have lost the best of the one end or the other end of the car. And Warren's saying, well, if we'd maybe had a set of tyres that we could have run prior to going into qualifying, that would have given me a better steer on what way to go with the car. But as he said, he's not too concerned about where he's going to start. He doesn't feel that it's such a disadvantage. And my view is this weekend, even though you have pole position, you've got the best opportunity. I don't think pole position here is any shoe-in whatsoever to taking victory here this afternoon.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Around this circuit, anything can happen. We've seen it so many times before. Well, let's just keep an eye on Ricardo Zonta here as he hustles the number 25 Reiter Lamborghini around this track, which he knows so well and which he really loves, and he's got a lot of supporters coming here this weekend, so he'll want to put on a great show for them. The 34-year-old FIA GT1 champion back in 1998 when he was driving an AMG Mercedes with a certain Mark Webber in the other car on that 1998 season. And then, of course, Ricardo himself going on to be a Formula 1 driver for BAR in 1999 and 2000. A few races for Jordan, some races for Toyota as well. But then his Formula 1 career never really quite got going, did it, John? Never quite perhaps had the opportunity in the right car at the right time?
It's so much these days being right car, but more the right time to be in the right car. And Ricardo Zonta, he can go back to Brazil with a proud career, but let's watch and see when he comes up to compete. The quickest we've seen overall so far has been a low 32 in that first qualifying segment.
Lovely view there. Relaxed, a little adjustment they will look like on the brake balance. He's looking around, looks at the pit wall, checks the instruments. He's now up to 250 Ks or more, 260 Ks before he breaks the centre S. Real demanding corner, and it's lovely to watch him at work.
So, very experienced driver in this style of car. And again, adjustment. We saw yesterday when we were watching this first practice session, a lot of, and something flailing, is that a bit of tape on the front of that Lamborghini flailing around, but a lot of adjustment on the brake balance. He's making about 3 adjustments per lap on the brake balance. There's a knob just beneath those 2 red switches, which he drops his hands down to maybe put a bit more brake in the front, then a bit more on the back, depending where he is on the racetrack.
A little shake of the head, or is it a difficult one to read? He's been doing a lot of looking at the instruments. Now he's coming into the tighter infield section here, looking around in the mirrors as well. I think he might have backed it off a little bit. I wonder if he had a bit of a problem there. I'm not sure. Well, let's wait and see. So far at the moment, he's done the 1 lap, and he is quickest on a 1:32.5. Westbrook currently second fastest. Neil Yarni is third quickest. Mark Henrici fourth. Then it's Dominic Schwager. And you're watching Enrico Bernoldi. This could be a good lap from Bernoldi. Goes quickest in the Vitaphone Maserati. Enrico Bernoldi, his teammates may be way down the back for the qualifying race, but he has currently gone fastest on a 1:32.285. Mark Henrici now in the Corvette. What can he do in response? Enger's just gone second in the Aston Martin. That's a good effort, John.
We haven't really seen Aston Martin performing.
No.
Thomas Enger's dragged it out. Richard Westbrook, likewise, right now has got a fastest of anybody in that middle sector. So expect to see Richard Westbrook currently down in 4th place in the 4 GT. He should be elevating himself up to possibly front row grid position.
Let's see as Mark Henrici comes across the line, and now Corvette goes second. It's Maserati on top. Corvette second, Aston Martin third, Lamborghini fourth, currently Ford fifth, but Westbrook, as you say, is on a good lap. That might change in a moment or two. Plunging back down the hill goes Henrici, but we pick up Richard Westbrook with good sectors so far. Can he maintain it? This is what it's all about for the Martech team and for his teammate Thomas Much as he tries to close the points gap to Bertolini and Bartels, but Schwager's just gone fastest in the Lamborghini. That's the new target.
And it's the fastest lap of the weekend so far. So what's Richard Westbrook going to do? Lamborghini taking it away from Maserati, from Corvette, from Aston Martin.
He goes sixth. That's not as quick as we might have expected, but it's still the best effort from the Martech team throughout this season so far, particularly with this number 5 car. Number 6 car, meanwhile, of Neil Yarni is just 1 place behind, and they're trying to close that gap if at all possible. That car actually did qualify third at Navarra, the other car with Neil Yarni driving, so they have had a second row starting position with the second car, but Westbrook will be desperate to try and get a bit more, and look at him pushing that Ford GT over the curbs and slithering. Oh, and Schwager still trying hard as well.
Trying very hard, and he's decided that's it. We've got 3.5 minutes remaining. I've got the provisional pole position, 1:32.087, and he pushed way, very hard coming into Pinheiro corner, and the back end of the car got away. So he's out of it. He can do another lap should he choose to do so, but I suspect as we look at Richard Westbrook down at the Curva del Lago, running wide and wild as he goes through the first part, then coming back onto the track.
Yeah, that was a bit too much, wasn't it? When on the first bit of going off, I thought, he might get away with this, but he was going too wide there. So Dominic Schwager, the number 38 Lamborghini, it could be their first pole position. It could be the team's first pole position, but there are still just under 3 minutes to go, and there's some quick cars, and this one in particular of Enrique Bernoldi could be a big, big threat, and he's just set the fastest middle sector time of anybody. Currently third quickest, but this could be a top spot, a drive from Enrique Bernoldi.
But it's this part of the racetrack that hurts the Maserati. It's a long uphill climb. They're carrying ballast. and just they don't have the out-and-out horsepower that some of the V8s, the Nissan and the Corvette in particular, have got.
Is it going to be enough for the Maserati across the line? Yes, it is. Bernoldi does it by 27 thousandths of a second. Enrique Bernoldi has put the Maserati on top. Lamborghini gets pushed back to second. Aston Martin is third. Corvette fourth. Ford fifth. And the Nissan of Dumbreck is in sixth place. Zonta's down in seventh place now. And Neil Yarni and the other Martech Ford pushed down to eighth place. Still perhaps a couple of cars are on quick laps, but what a drive from another former ex-Grand Prix driver, Enrique Bernoldi, who has shown how to get round this Sao Paulo circuit.
And just to compound that performance, they've got a very strong backup driver, support driver to Bernoldi, and Sandy Negrão, who also, in his middle qualifying segment, was also very, very competitive.
Definitely, so it's a very strong driver lineup in this number 2 car, but Dominic Schwager is now going to try and get it back. He had pole position just a few moments ago, and he's only been beaten by the merest margin. Can he now squeeze just a little more time out of the car?
Doesn't look like it in sector times on this particular lap. He's got another lap available should he so choose to make use of it. Currently in that second place, front row of the grid.
Across the line he goes, he stays second, no improvement on that lap, and no surprise there really. They've taken the best out of those tyres now. It's going to take something pretty special to improve on lap times that have already been set, but there are still a few cars out there. Dumbreck's just crossed the line, he's still in sixth place. Peter Dumbreck in the Sumo Power Nissan, still a good starting position, and Richard Westbrook in fifth place. Good effort from them, and that is by far their best qualifying performance of the year if it stays like that.
Yeah, this is the repeat of the incident we saw a moment or two ago from that Lamborghini. As we go back now to Thomas Enger in the Aston Martin.
That's for me the surprise of this segment of qualifying is this Aston Martin performance, John, because Enger's got it in third.
Yeah, but the thing is with the Aston, when it's right, it's competitive. When it's wrong, the drivers really struggle. They say it's all about temperature. Right now the temperatures are not that high, certainly not in relation to what we would expect in a number of hours' time.
Yeah, that's right. We'll be getting warmer and warmer, but nonetheless, good effort by Thomas Enger. He loves the qualifying buzz himself and done well. Neil Yarni here, well, he's ended up eighth fastest, so the slowest of this final sector or final segment of qualifying, but nonetheless, to have two of the Martech cars up there. And the other important thing is, of course, he will be starting way ahead of on the road of the Vitaphone Maserati, and to get in the points, that Vitaphone Maserati number 1 car of Bartels and Bertolini at some point will probably try and have to pass that Ford. So it helps the Martech team.
Absolutely, it's got to pass a number of cars that will be competitive, that will not be offering up any favours. When you're leading a race, as the Bartels car has done on a number of occasions, you get past cars a lot more easily because you get the assistance of the flags. But when you're having to make those moves yourself, you're hurting the car, you're hurting the tyres, and of course nobody is obliged to get out of your way. The fact that you might be leading the Drivers' Championship is irrelevant.
So right, yeah. So there's Peter Dumbreck coming into the pits. He has qualified the Nissan in 6th place, and I think they'll be relatively happy with their performance here in qualifying. He did a 1:32.5, which was a 10th quicker than Michael Krum did in the second segment of qualifying. All round a good effort by Krum and Dumbreck in the Sumo Power Nissan, and as we've heard from Warren Hughes, they feel as though they've got a car that will last throughout the race distance, which is crucial. But taking pole position here this weekend, it is Enrique Bernoldi with his teammate Sandy Negrão, and that is delight for the all-Brazilian driver lineup. It is the 3rd pole position for Maserati this year, but it's the first time that it's this car that has done it, that has taken pole position, and they will be very, very happy about that indeed.
Well, there are the two drivers. Delight indeed for that Maserati, Enrique Bernoldi, a bit of a mega star here in Brazil, of course, and probably most famous for his drive in Monte Carlo a number of years ago when David Coulthard was behind him, and he was heavily criticised at the time, I think unfairly, but a great effort here by Enrique Bernoldi, put that car on pole position. Two Brazilian drivers, and they're going to be in strong position. This pole position in this car will be strong. The only concern I have is off the start, the power of some of the V8s around them are clearly going to be to their advantage.
So, well, that is a real turn up for the books that this car has taken pole position, and yet their teammates will be starting all the way down in 19th. There is Andrea Bertolini in the background with a smile on his face to congratulate them. And, well, they'll be hoping perhaps they can do something to help in terms of chasing for the points. Of course, in the Teams Championship, this is crucial for Vitaphone because they were coming under pressure in the Teams Championship from the Reiter Lamborghini crew. And now, although their number 1 car might not have qualified well, their number 2 car has responded. And in terms of chasing those points for the Teams Championship, that has been crucial. So here we are, the results of qualifying. The Maserati of the Vitaphone team, but not the normal one. It's the number 2 car that has taken pole here of the all-Brazilian driver lineup, Bernoldi and Negrão. The Lamborghini of Schweg and Pastorelli, superb in second. Aston Martin of Enger and Turner in third. Then a Corvette in 4th place. And the Ford of Westbrook and Much in 5th. So 5 brands there in the top 5 place. In fact, the Nissan there in 6th place. So all 6 brands are represented in the top 6 places. You couldn't ask for more than that. That's how competitive it has been here. 7th place for the Lamborghini of Zonta and Kekela, and 8th place for the other Ford of Yanni and Armindo. But that really is special, John, that all 6 brands are represented there in that top 6.
I think it's a very exciting grid. It's a grid that